everybody. This is Case from Q101. Normally, when you watch me on Q101's YouTube channel, I'm highlighting an emerging or underground artist, somebody maybe you're not familiar with, but that I think you should be familiar with. Today is a different story. Today is somebody that everybody watching, they have heard this man's bass before. They have listened to the songs that he has co-written, smash hits on Q101. It is my pleasure to bring to a case for this week, Eric Bass, the bassist of Shinedown. How are you, my friend?
What is up, man? I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. It's gloomy behind me. I don't know if you can see. It's a rainy day in Chicago, but we're managing,
Man,
doing
I
okay.
feel bad for you. I have a very sunny tropical day here at home, so I'll just we won't talk too much about that. We
Well,
won't talk too much about that.
that makes sense because you have a lot going for you right now. The
Yeah,
first
man.
single of your new record, I Had a Name, which comes out February 25th. The first single, Mind Control, is out now. It is outstanding. I feel very comfortable saying that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I'm excited for this project. I am so curious though, as I sit here in this room at the Q101 studios, I think back to last summer when Brent and Zach from Shinedown came in and they played an acoustic session for us. They hung out on the morning show, and that felt like it was, in a way, reintroducing Shinedown to this alternative audience. And ever since then, you guys have been on a tear, crossing over into all these other formats, having this great year of success that you've had. Why is now the time to do a solo record when Shinedown feels as hot as they are?
The record's actually been done for about 2 years, so I guess I finished the last mix 2 days before Brent and I started writing what would be the record Planet Zero. So
Really?
yeah, I mean, I don't multitask well. I got to do one thing at a time, and I've been working on this record for a minute, and Brent was like ready to get going on writing, and I'm like, hey man, just let me finish my mixes. As soon as my mixes are done, we can get going. And I called him. I was like, hey man, I'll be done tomorrow with the mixes, and he was in town 2 days later, and then I get into engineering and writing and producing and mixing Shinedown records, and then this record that I made just kind of sits off to the side. And honestly, man, I wasn't sure if I was going to release it at all, to be honest. It's one of those records that I really made for myself, and it was kind of an experiment in a way to see if I could pull it off, to play everything and mix everything and write everything and do the whole thing myself, and really made something that is part of a larger story that's going to be out in a graphic novel next year. That is a larger world that I built, and a book that I've been writing, and it's just something near and dear to my heart. And honestly, man, some people might kind of not understand that, but the artists will understand when you make something for yourself. And I just sat on it, man. I sent it out to some friends. The band had heard it, my wife had heard it, select people. I think I sent it to Clint Lowry from Seven Dust, and my buddy Phil Dimmel, and Ben Bruce, Asking Alexandria. I sent them, I sent them the record just to listen to, as friends of mine. And but other than that, I hadn't really done much with it. And then my band began to threaten me with violence, and my wife as well, if I didn't put it out, because they all loved it, and thought it was great, and probably they probably think it's greater than I think it is. So which is an amazing part of our band. We all get along really well. And so um right now just seems like I have this window, between now and new Shinedown music that'll come out next year. So just felt like this was now or never, I guess.
I am so curious about this idea of you possibly never releasing this record because you wrote it, you recorded it, I assume you produced it. It's this whole
Yep.
giant undertaking. You got the graphic novel that you mentioned. At any point during this creative process, were you like, "Oh, bit off too much here. This is officially too daunting, and I'm just gonna file this away and pretend it never happened. Never. I don't want to do a solo album. Never mind."
No, not during the making of it. The making of it, like, that's when I thrive. I thrive in the trenches of making big projects. Even when it seems to, I mean, making the videos for these, there are 5 videos that I made that go with 5 of the tracks on the record. Mind Control being the first one that was released, and that's something where I was completely out of my depth. Right, I'd been in multiple, probably 20, 30 videos myself, but had never directed, had never produced and gotten it all together, and edited. I'm editing all the videos myself. So there were some moments during the video stuff where I'm like, oh man, that's, I was really like kind of hand in, face in hand, like, oh man, what have I done? But I do, man. I thrive in those moments because we as people have a tendency to talk about the good old days, man. Remember the good old days? Remember back when this was that and that was the other thing, and we, and I have to remind myself these are the good old days right now. I'm making, I'm trying to enjoy the process of making these things, and it's Shinedown Records as well, because for a long time when I had a tendency to view record making, while I love it, it was a task to be completed, and not really thinking about, just taking it 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time, trying to push through this thing and get it done. Same thing with my records, same thing with these videos. And at some point I turned a corner where I was like, this it's about the process. It's not about the end result, for the person making it and for the artist. And so honestly, man, like I did, yeah, of course everyone has those moments when they're involved in something that's meaningful to them and that it requires a lot of mental and emotional acuity, right? But at the end of the day, looking at it as such a privilege to be able to to do these things, there's no time for wondering what I'm doing. I should be thanking the Lord that I'm able to do something I love. So that's really kind of what I've come into, how I've come into viewing these things, these big projects.
So when you tackle something new like this, what did you learn about yourself as an artist during this process? Because I think about the longevity of Shinedown. Like, I'm 25, so they've been in my life as long as I've been consuming music, and it's a
Yeah.
band that just continues to evolve and crank out hits, and it's always fun to see what you guys do next. But this is uncharted territory for you. So what did you learn as an artist during this process?
I learned that I'm more malleable than I thought I was. I deal with depression and neurodivergence and some ADD and autism and things like that that in the past have had a tendency to get in my way. I thought they were getting in my way when having to things when something wouldn't go right to planned, I'd panic and almost internally melt down and have these moments of no one can see it on the outside, but inside I'm just barely hanging on by a thread. And um, uh, I learned that how much more capable I was than I thought I was to pivot and make something else happen when something isn't working. You have no choice. And again, I go back to the videos just because it's omnipresent in my mind right now. The videos for this record, where it's like, it's not just me in a room anymore. It's me and 20 individuals who are relying on me to have all the answers. And sometimes I don't have all the answers, and sometimes I don't know what the next move is. And sometimes when the you know when the mannequin won't light on fire, it's my responsibility to figure out how to make it light on fire, and which is something that actually happened, right? So when everything's falling apart, it's like, okay, so I almost was able to, and in the record making process as well, because it's puzzle solving is all we're doing. That's it. You're writing something emotional, you're creating something emotional that means something to you, but when it comes time to assemble it, to put it together, to make it flow and work, it's a puzzle, and you just got to figure it out. And there are definitely moments of what do I do now? Or this whole thing's falling apart, like you were talking about before. But learning that in that, my problem solving skills are way sharper than I thought they were at the end of the day. So, in the moment, because I don't like pressure. I'm not I don't work well under, I used to say I didn't work well under pressure again. And I've realized that I actually do work really well under pressure. Just I have to defragment my brain to think a different way about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's keep talking about those videos, because the mind control video is out now. It's a phenomenal piece of filmmaking, dare I say. I hope you're proud of the video, because I think it's really something incredible. But from the horse's mouth, for those that maybe haven't seen the video or watched it and then scratched their head and went, I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from that. Can you walk us through the story of the mind control video?
Yeah. So what I did is on the record, there's a song for each main character that appears on the record. There are a lot of characters in the story, but I have just kind of four main characters in the album, and each one of those characters has a song. Um, and so those were the four of the main videos we're doing are for those characters. And this is my character Devarin, and Devarin is the dictator, the villain who has taken over this world basically. And uh it's interesting trying to find a metaphoric way to tell a story, in a music video form, because it's such a nuanced and deep story that, how do you tell something in 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes of time. But like Devarn has this hatred for the populace that he has taken over. They're like a necessary thing he has to deal with to achieve his ends, and he really doesn't like them very much. He mind controls them, of course. That's the name of the song, to try to control them and keep them happy. But he just despises them. But then at the end of the song, he has this moment where he also feels like he's being controlled by something as well, and he's not sure why he does the things he does. He's very conflicted in the story and in the video, and so that's why at the end of the video he's looking at himself in the mirror, and is basically at the end of the day you know, carries out the same type of punishment on himself that he puts everyone else through. And the interesting thing about this record as a whole is that unintentionally, I wrote the most autobiographical record I've ever written through these characters. It was super easy to write, which usually means you're writing from an honest place. When you're fabricating things and fabricating ideas, songs are kind of hard to write. They're very hard to write because you can't put yourself in that situation very well. At least for me personally, I have to kind of have experienced something. And I was just blowing through these lyrics and writing these songs about these characters. And yes, I know the characters very well because they've been living in my head for a long time. But when I finally kicked back and listened to the record, there's a song on the record called Good Night, Good Night. And it's probably one of the songs that's closest to me on a personal level. And I was listening to that song and I had this moment where this ice shot through my veins. I had this revelation that I'd written this autobiographical piece having to do with my depression, having to do with dealing with a neurodivergent brain, why I was the way I was when I was a child, why I'm the way I am now. And I just laid it all out on these characters, the poor things. Devarin really represents the darkness. He represents the depression and the confusion and this thing that crept into my world when I was a child. While I obviously had struggles with dealing with things I was dealing with, I didn't really understand it, and so I was a pretty happy kid, and on the outside anyway. And then this depression kind of crept into my teens and 20s, and so that's really what Devarin is. That's what he represents in the story, and yeah. So in the video, it's just interesting to try to find a metaphor for that, for that
Yeah.
sort of experience, and so that's what's going on.
When you write a song, Shinedown and Q101, we've developed this great relationship where mental health is a focus of a lot of the things that both of our brands do. Brand, I know is a gross word, but let's use that term right now as an umbrella term. When you're writing a song that deals with those subjects in any way, how do you balance that with also taking care of yourself? Are there ever times where you write a song and you go like, oh man, I flew too close to the sun on this one. This actually conjured up some things in me that are not healing as much as they are harming. Does that ever happen?
Yeah. Well, look, and this isn't me. First of all, before I even start into that, the one thing that I really work hard on and that people need to understand is that when I do talk about mental health issues, that I honestly am doing it from a place of wanting to help people. I don't see myself as a victim of mental health. It's just a part of me, and it is what it is. And I think that the more that you can do that, you can ruminate in this thing and think about it too much. And the more you think about it, the worse it gets. And so I never tried to ruminate in it or come from a place of, oh, poor me, I'm a victim of this. But to answer your question, I'm horrible with my own personal the way I speak to myself. My internal voice is super mean.
Yes, I understand.
I'm very hard on myself. I'm constantly calling myself names. And in fact, when we were filming the video, one of my great friends who's playing one of the characters, she heard me. We were filming, and I was like, I said something like, "Yeah, Eric, you're such a fucking idiot, man. What are you doing? like this is so stupid." And she stopped. And this is somebody I've known for a long time. She goes, "What was that?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What was that?" She goes, "That, what was that?" And I was like, "Oh, that's just the way I talk to myself." And she looks at me in this very loving, caring way. She goes, "That is horrible. Like, you shouldn't do that."
No, I laugh because I'm you in the situation. I do the same thing to myself.
But it never dawned on me that like that has always been my voice. It's always there. And so when I'm writing these songs, that's the voice that's there. That voice of like, you got to get this right. If you don't get this right, you're stupid. You're not good enough. There's no such thing as failure. There's this hard driving thing that's just always been present in me that probably contributes a lot to the way that I feel sometimes. That's what's driving the ship. That's what's driving these songs. So it's always there. When what feels really good is when, again, we talk about the puzzle, when you crack the code on the song and it starts to become something beautiful. Um, that thing lets up. And I don't know any other way to describe that, but like when you're, when the pieces of the puzzle are all laid out on the table, and you know, and again, in my brain, it's life or death. It's fight or flight. It's like if you don't get this right, you're going to be looked at as an idiot. So you got to get this right. There are no, you can't afford to write a bad song. All these things that are just terrible to tell yourself. But once those pieces of the puzzle start to fit in, and that first major piece locks in place, and you can see the picture now, and you know what it is. That fear of starting something starts to wane. That terrifies me. Starting something new, starting a new video, starting a new song, a new session in Pro Tools, a blank page on the paper. Brent and I call it staring down the beast. You know, once that beast starts to calm down, you've got some thoughts written down. You've got subject matter. Yes, you're writing about your mental health, but then it starts to become therapeutic. It kind of it turns over from this like chaos and this um uh uh agitation to love and this endearing feeling for this thing that you're creating. And then once you get the song written and it's all finished, then it's time to produce it and mix it, and all that starts over again, because now you got a blank mix, and the mix can't suck, and it's you're terrible at your job, and you've always sucked at mixing, and this is never going to be great. And then you push the right fader up, and it's like the magic starts to happen, and then you're like, oh, I don't suck. So it's this constant roller coaster, and I don't know if that's answering your question or not, but
No,
but
absolutely.
but the thing is this goes back to writing from an honest place. These things are happening in real time as myself and Brent and Zach and Barry and Dave Bassett, our other great friend that we write with a lot. When we're like, this stuff's happening in my brain in real time while we're working, and so that goblin or whatever it is, that dark thing is just kind of always peeking over my shoulder, or it's omnipresent the whole
Yeah,
time. And
absolutely.
so honestly, man, but it at the end of the day, when it's finished and you've got something that came from that kind of a place that has the potential to help somebody. And I don't mean for that to sound campy. I don't mean for that to sound woo woo or anything else, but man, like with Shinedown and with myself, especially with this record, I had a name. It's always the same thing. It's like, how many people can I help with this? Because it doesn't, and this goes back to why I put my record out as well. Rick Rubin said that art is not complete until you give it to somebody. And so completing something and uh, turning it over to others to grab something from it. And that doesn't mean that the help that they get from it is all mental health and all this. I'm talking like music heals, man. I don't care if you're in a mosh pit or if you're crying in the minivan in the driveway. Like whatever you're doing, whatever music does for you, it's healing. And so that's how I view it always, is like, I hope that this thing that I made can help somebody, and people can get wild enjoyment out of it. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I don't care what your sexual affiliation is. I don't care what your race, religion, doesn't matter to me at all. Like, what can you take from this? And so at the end of the day, man, that's what I care about.
Good, good. Well, Eric, let's end on this. As we sit here right now, only Mind Control is out, but by February, you'll have this record out, all these songs that you've worked so hard on.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious whether you're touring with Shinedown and somebody stops you at the venue and they say this, or you're reading your mentions on social media. What is the thing that you're most excited for people to hear on the new album? What are you hoping that somebody stops you in Tulsa, Oklahoma and goes, oh man, I heard that line, or I heard this song, or I heard this riff. That was awesome. And you also feel that same way.
Oh, you asking for particular? Like, is
Yeah,
there a
yeah, yeah.
particular thing? There's a particular song on the record I talked about Good Night, Good Night. Subject matter wise, Good Night, Good Night is a very, very close song to me, because it's about Good Night is about uh looking back, or not even looking back, leaving that version of yourself. I was talking about the happy kid, that version of yourself that was blissful, because all of us go through this. Most of us, I won't say all of us, those of us who had a normal upbringing, a normal childhood, we go through this time of like blissful childhood, and then at some point the real world happens. And for some of us, people roll right into the real world and it's fine. For some of us, it just hits us right in the face, and something happens, and you have a switch. And for me, it was looking back at that child and saying, you know, wishing it a good night, and him a good night, and saying, you know, I hope that wherever you are, you're okay. You know, that song lyrically is really special to me. There's a song called Azalea, which is she's my main female protagonist in this story, and that her song is really really special to me, man. So I hope that I hope people like that one for sure. That one is one that musically and lyrically, you know, that I dig a lot. So
good. Well, I Had a Name is going to be out February 25th, 2025. I have in my notes here 2024, but we're in 2024. Eric, I can't thank you enough for your time. Before we go, is there anything else you want to plug? Anything you want to let the people of Q101 know?
Man, just know that February 28th, I Had a Name comes out next year. You get a new Shinedown record as well, and Shinedown will be hitting the road on top of that. So we also, my boy Barry, my drummer, he did a new Shinedown hot sauces, man. Check out the Shinedown hot sauces as well. We got a lot of stuff going on, man. Each member of the band has like a little side thing that we're doing right now. So there are my plugs. Check it out.
I love it. Come and see us when you're in Chicago. We'd love to invite you into the studio this time around. In the meantime, I'm on Instagram @_ Case Lowe. That is CaseLowe. This is A Case For, new episodes every Monday on Q101's YouTube channel. Eric, I can't thank you enough. Have a great day.
Case, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.